Okay, another economic benefit of tourism is it can be built on existing infrastructure. Uh, I'd like to give Incheon Airport as an example. So Incheon Airport is known to be one of the best airport in the world. And because it's known as the best airport in the world, then it's not only best, but it's also a huge airport that can accommodate a lot of people arriving and departing in Korea. And so, because we already have this facility, then we can take advantage of it and generate more tourists by letting them in through this big airport. It also develops an infrastructure that will also help stimulate local commerce and industry. So, as you all know, recently Korea hosted the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics. And to support this Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, and because the Korean government is anticipating a lot of tourists or a lot of visitors who will be coming into Korea as, of course, members of the Winter Olympics or athletes, and also their families and also spectators. So Korea thought of building another airport, and as you all know, we have now another big airport, which is Incheon Terminal 2. And so, because of that second airport, then Korea is anticipating that it will stimulate the local commerce. It will create more opportunities or more. It can invite more people to come and visit Korea. Okay, let's continue learning about the economic benefits of tourism. So, tourism can also develop local products and resources. Korea is known for its skincare products, and a lot of Koreans locally they patronize the local skincare product. And because of the Korean novellas or the Korean movies that were shared and distributed worldwide, then people get to know the skincare products. And that is one of the reasons why people come here to buy the skincare. So the usual skincare product, which is offered locally, are now mass produced to cater to the needs of a bigger market, which is the world market. Okay, so thus, it results to a diversified economy. Diversified economy means originally Korean businesses only produces for Korean, but because of the exposure of the local products to foreign people, then it diversified the economy. It made the economy bigger by offering it to tourists. Not only the skincare, but I would like to give you another example how the economy is diversified. As you all know, wherever you go here in Korea, you will always see a Korean traditional restaurant. Maybe you'll see also some international chains, like, for example, KFC or Starbucks, or maybe a McDonald's. But those were before. Now, you can also see the mushrooming of a different kind of restaurant, which is a halal certified restaurant. Why? Because we are expecting a lot of Muslims to visit the country, and because also we have students who are staying here for a short visit or short study would normally look for this kind of food. And so, because of this, foreign students who are Muslim, then the restaurant industry is diversifying. Okay? Another is it tends to be compatible with other economic activities. Uh, Tourism is compatible with other economic activities such as the restaurant industry, or maybe the industry that offers a lot of products like the skincare stores or maybe the department stores. So all the local activities here can benefit from the tourist. So because tourism is a very dynamic industry, and people tends to move a lot, people go and visit destinations as often as they can, it helps the spread of the development. Other areas that are not developed are starting to develop because of the influx of tourists. I would like to give you Jeonju as an example. Jeonju is a place, it's a town in the Jeolla province that is known as a slow city. And although it's a small city, Jeonju has the biggest Hanok village. In Hanok village, our traditional house is actually a cultural attraction to people. They would like to see how it looks like. And so, because a lot of people are visiting Jeonju, the Jeonju, which is known as a slow city before, slowly became become actually a developed place. Okay, and tourism has a high multiplier effect. A high multiplier effect means it's an increase in tourist expenditure. Imagine if you will go to a destination. What will you do in that destination? Of course, you will take pictures. You will try to look what you can bring home with you. So you'll do some shopping. You've heard that the best food is in there, like the food that you are craving for a long time. And then you will try to find that restaurant and buy that food. And because of that, there is a multiplier uh, impact that happens in connection with this tourism. And so, because the local industries or the local businesses are earning more money, not only from the local tourists, but from international tourists as well, thus it increases the government revenue. Okay? Doesn't want to move forward. Okay? Anyway, moving on to another force or another area that tourism has impacted is the social impact. So, social, number one is it broadens educational and cultural horizons because we meet a lot of people. We tend to be educated about where they come from. Like before, I've never heard of Moldova, but because I have met somebody who's from there, then she started talking about it and giving me information about her country and about their culture. So from then on, I get to know where Moldova is, and I get to learn the culture of the place. Tourism also improves the quality of life. How does it improve the quality of life? It gives higher incomes and improves standards of living. So how do we explain this? Imagine the local people making money by having business with the local people as well. But because of the influx of international tourists to Korea, then they can sell more. Selling more means higher income. And higher income means improving their standard of living. Also, tourism justifies environmental protection and improvement. Even though we're doing this activity, we're allowing people to, to trek or maybe to get close to nature. But let's not forget that we also protect the environment. And people would normally cooperate and would submit themselves in the protection of the environment. Like for example, they're not allowed to touch anything in the environment. They're not allowed to leave their litters like when they hike. And so it helps environmental protection. And also it provides tourist and recreational facilities that may be used by a local population. So the facilities are not only for the tourists, it's built by the local community to accommodate tourists, even the recreational facilities to accommodate tourists, but it's not restricted to tourists alone. They usually share it to the local people. Okay, I think there's more. Okay, what are the cultural benefits? First, it reinforces preservation of heritage and tradition because we would like the next generation to see what happened in the past. And so the coming of tourists really pushes people to learn how to preserve the heritage. There are actually courses that teaches cultural preservation. There are courses that teach them how to manage the heritage. And so because of tourism, it helps in the preservation of the heritage and of the tradition of a certain country or culture. Visitors' interest in local culture provides employment for artists, musicians, and other performing artists, enhancing cultural heritage. I'd like to cite an example. Not employment for the artists can be if you've been to Busan along Hyundai Beach or along your way to Hyundai Beach, you will see a lot of artists offering their service, making a natural photo of yourself, or maybe making a comic out of you. So they actually are making money, or they're having an employment by giving or offering their service to draw your face or to make a caricature out of you. In other places, artists, uh, as they play their songs, as they use their instrument, would normally make money by playing for the public, and they usually have this box or a container wherein you can give like $1 if you're happy listening to the music, or it's a way of helping them continue their craft. And other artists, like for example those who are dressed in their traditional clothes, going and walking around and maybe offering you to take pictures with them and making money out of it. Oh, we have actually local people or tribal people who are posing for a picture with you, but they charge you a little amount to probably to make a living, and also to uh, to maintain, or probably to take care of their needs, like for example if they need to change their costume. Okay, so culturally, tourism breaks down the language barriers, social cultural barriers, class barriers, racial barriers, political barriers, and religious barriers. So it removes the barrier between language, between culture. How does it remove the language barrier? By actually encouraging people to communicate not only in a language that is known to the foreigner or to the tourist, but into a common language. I have a student actually who did mention that he doesn't speak English well, but he needs to communicate whenever he goes to a destination. And so what he does is he uses body language to communicate. Social cultural barrier. What can be a social cultural barrier? A misconception about a culture, that sometimes you are stereotyping a person from a certain culture because that's what you've read from the book, that's what you heard from a friend, but because you have had the opportunity to interact with that person from another culture, or another country, then you try to understand, or you get to understand the person. Class barrier, when we say class, this is more on the social class, like for example the rich, the poor, or the middle class. Racial, it's a very self-explanatory word. Racial would mean the different races, like the westerners against the easterners or the Asians. Then political barrier, What example of political barrier? Usually, these are issues related to tourist visits, like the visa, okay? And religious barrier would mean like sometimes you don't have any idea who and what is a Muslim. But because you've met one, either you went to their place or they went to your place, then you get to know each other's religion, or you tend to understand their religion. Okay? I think it will blink just like the previous slide. Yeah, just to give you a break. Okay? Now, more on cultural benefits of tourism. It creates a favorable worldwide image for a destination. As I said, usually you stereotype. You stereotype a person, you stereotype a destination, but after reaching or after visiting the place, you tend to create or you tend to understand an image that probably was misconceived by you. I'll give you an example for this one. Recently, during the winter break, my husband and I went to Taipei. And it was during, oh, not during, it was before the breakout of the virus. So a week before, we're so lucky that we were not, we're already out of the country when that happened, out of Taipei or out of Taiwan when that happened. Before, he doesn't know about the Taiwanese people. So he only has assumptions about them. But because we visited the place and because he got to experience interacting with the locals, like the Taiwanese, like he encountered the Taiwanese who are in the airport or when we checked in. And actually, when we are out eating, and he got this impression and told me that, you know what, the Taiwanese people are kind. They're very accommodating. Before, he doesn't have that impression. But because he was able to go to Taipei, then he got the impression of what is real, what's actually the image of the people and the destination as well. Okay? And also, it promotes a global community. What is a global community? A global community is a community which is inclusive. Inclusive in a sense that you don't say Korea is only for Koreans. But a global community would mean anybody is welcome in your place. Anywhere you go, you're also welcome. And so it breaks the barrier. Okay? And it also promotes international understanding and peace because you get to know the person, you get to know the culture, you get to understand why they act in such a way, why they say such words. Then that understanding leads to peace, leads to no fight, but leads to tolerance and actually mutual understanding. So, yeah, those are some of the benefits of tourism when we talk about the cultural impact. Okay, so it's again blinking. I'll just continue and move on. Now, maybe you're convinced that it really is beneficial to have this tourism activity, not only within the local area, but country level or national level or regional level, because you have seen how it benefits the economy, how it benefits the culture, and socially as well. But all those things are the positive thing or the positive side. However, if there are positive implications or positive contributions of tourism, there are also disadvantages of having a tourism business or tourism industry in a certain area, like a community, or maybe a town, or maybe a country. So let's look at the disadvantages. I actually have two disadvantages for the economy and for the social. So, economically, first, it develops an excess demand. What is an excess demand? Excess demand is not good for the local community. Why do I say that? Because an excess demand would mean a shortage of resources. And when there's a shortage of resources, the possible tendency is for the resource or for the commodity to be sold at a higher price. And so, therefore, it affects the local people. So it also results in high leakage. What's that leakage? The leakage probably in finances economically. So leakage in terms of the spending of the money. Like sometimes you want only to spend for basic necessities, like for example the food and the accommodation when you go to a tour. But because you were enticed to bring home a souvenir, or probably you like um, a shirt in the local area that you would like to bring home, then there's a tendency for you to overspend. Not only overspend, but to spend to something extra that you don't need. That's the explanation of resulting in high leakage. It also creates difficulties of seasonalities. Seasonality creates difficulties of seasonality would mean tourism is highly seasonal. When I say seasonal, there are times that a destination would have a lot of tourists, and there are times also that the destination would be running out of tourists. Let's say, for instance, um, a winter ski resort. A winter ski resort has a high demand, or it has a peak season during winter time. And so there's a lot of people visiting the place who would like to ski, who would like to make fun in the snow. And that only happens during winter season. Now the question is, what happens after winter? What happens to the businesses after winter? The businesses related to food, the businesses related to the accommodation. Another disadvantage is it causes inflation. What is inflation? Inflation is a general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. So, directly, it will affect the locals if the prices of the basic needs will go up and the purchasing power of their money will be less. And it can result in an unbalanced economic development. Unbalanced economic development would mean that what who benefits from the tourism activity is only the tourists, but the locals are actually neglected. That's why we would like to make sure that there's a balanced economic development that does not only benefits the tourism uh, uh, people, but also it also benefits the local industries or the local people. So this activity of tourism should be a win-win thing. And it increases vulnerability to economic and political changes. Increase in vulnerability to economic because, as we keep on saying, tourism is a very dynamic industry, and so because it's dynamic, it tends to be vulnerable to a lot of economic changes. Like for example, because it's seasonal, and so therefore during peak season, everything is on its high price, from the flights to accommodation to probably food, and vulnerability also to political changes because every country should take part in this tourism activity. And so, like for example, in the situation that we are in right now, And because the government would like to protect the local people on the what's this the health concern, and so they are actually closing the country to any foreign visitor. So there's a political change of, before it used to allow a lot of people to get in, but because of the current situation now, they are trying to, stop the movement of people. Okay. So yeah, it's blinking to remind you of the different issues that we talked about under the disadvantages of tourism and how it impacts us economically. Okay, let's move on to the disadvantages of tourism within the social area. So it creates social problems. If it A while ago we talked about peace, understanding, but sometimes it also creates social problems wherein maybe you've heard of the term xenophobia. Xenophobia is a fear of tourists, and so not everybody in the host community or the local people are acceptable or are accepting when it comes to tourists. And so if there are places that are not open to tourists, this can possibly create a social problem. Tourism also degrades the natural physical environment and creates pollution. If everything is not managed properly, or we say it's mismanaged, the natural physical environment has a big tendency to be degraded. Like, for example, if there's an over tourist in the beach, like the tendency would be the degradation of the physical environment, maybe because a lot of tourists don't know how to behave. Like when they go to the beach, a lot of people would leave litter, and some would pee on the beach, and those are things that will definitely degrade the natural physical environment. Creating pollution. I don't know if you have seen in the internet a photo in Jeju Airport wherein it showcased a lot of garbage, a lot of litter in the airport. And that is because a lot of people also, I will not mention any race, a lot of people also visited Jeju. And these people don't know how to take care of the environment, and so they just throw things anywhere, and it creates pollution and degrades the cultural environment. How does the cultural environment can be degraded if the local community is actually not open to accepting of tourists? Then uh, their culture or their local community might be threatened by the presence of tourists. It also threatens family structure. How? It threatens family structure in a way that maybe instead of having a common time, a family time, people would think, or family members would think of going to places that they would like. So they don't have a consensus on where to go. Maybe the kids would like to go somewhere else, and the parents would like to go to a place wherein they can commute with nature. And so instead of bonding the family, it threatens the structure by creating division. Okay, so these are some of the disadvantages of tourism that affects the social environment. Although, of course, this is not all, but probably you can think more of it. So, tourism can also commercialize culture, religion, and the arts. What is commercialization? Commercialization is not doing it for the sake of culture, for the sake of art, but trying to make money out of it. How do you make money out of culture? when you sell maybe the destination, like because people would like to see how the place looks like or how the culture looks like, they tend to charge for an entrance fee. Or maybe same also for the religion, that if, let's say, um, some people are curious how their temple, how their place of worship looks like, and they don't allow other religion to get in, but they will change the rule and allow people to see what's going on inside, how it looks like, but for a certain fee, and even the arts. It also creates misunderstanding. Misunderstanding only happens if two sides don't want to meet halfway, and if two sides will insist on what they think is right. And also, it creates conflicts in the whole society. How? If people who will be going to a certain community would be insistent of their culture, would feel superior of their race, and so I can say that that can start a conflict in the host society, and it contributes to disease, economic fluctuation, and transportation problem. We don't need to give an example for disease. It's happening right now. Economic fluctuation, as I've said, inflation is very possible because of the movement of people. Transportation problems is, before, the transportation is only for local people, but because of the tourists, they're losing their seat, they're losing their space in public transportation. Okay, so it commercializes culture, religion, and the arts. It creates misunderstanding. It creates conflicts in the whole society. It contributes to disease, economic fluctuation, and transportation problem. So you've seen what are the benefits of tourism in terms of economic, cultural, and social benefits or impacts. And then we have also seen what are the disadvantages of tourism looking into the lens of economic and social environment. Now, it's up to you to decide. Do you think we should practice tourism? Do you think we should adopt this tourism business? It's up for you to decide now. I hope you learned something from this video, and let me hear your comments. Let me hear your reactions as we go online on the next online meeting schedule. With that, I thank you for listening and see you on the next video